Hey, how's it going, y'all? So, last video obviously was the Alaska video, and in that video, I briefly mentioned that I did Doordash all summer long to pay for my Alaska trip. So, I didn't elaborate on that further, but this video, I just kind of want to elaborate a little bit more about the Doordash experience and what I did to pay for my Alaska trip, how much I made, is Doordash even a good option for you, stuff like that. So as I said in the Alaska video, I was inspired by Ruben Schmitz, the guy who went to all 7 continents without any money. And again, I want to do something cool like that, and I didn't know how to do it. I tried selling some cookies to like 2 people, but I got rejected both times. And even though I do sales for my professional job, I didn't want to be bothering people on the street trying to sell cookies, raising however much I needed for Alaska, right? So I decided to do some Doordash, and I had done Doordash before a few years ago, and it was all right, but I decided to really just go hard for a few months and just really grind out to get some money saved up for this trip. So first things first, I assume most of you guys know what Doordash is, but if you don't know, Doordash is basically a platform where you can order your favorite meals online, whether it's fast food or something from your favorite local restaurant. You can order that and people will deliver it right to your house. Now for this to work, they need drivers, and so on the flip side of that, you can actually get paid to dash people's food to their houses. So that's what I did, right? And you can actually make pretty good money doing this. So I'll break down the numbers here in a second, but I live in Huntsville, which is a city of about 250,000, maybe about 500,000 in the metro area. And I'll put a map of the zone on screen because Doordash is divided into zones, right? But Huntsville, this is an absolutely massive zone. It probably stretches about an hour from north to south, maybe about 45 minutes east to west. So it can be kind of inefficient at times, but if you're in a bigger city like Charlotte, for example, or Atlanta, there'll be smaller subzones, and it'll try to keep you in the same zone, so it'll be a little bit more efficient. But regardless, even living in Huntsville or a city like it, you can still make decent money. So let's go over the numbers here. On screen up here, I'm going to be putting up a few screenshots of what I made. So as you can see up here, I made over $1,100 in a 2-month period, right? Which is pretty good. And I want to break down my schedule because I wasn't doing this full time at all. So what I was doing was I was working at a job that was pretty flexible, work from home sales job. And at this point, around June, July, I was actually looking for another job because things were kind of slowing down. In sales, you got to talk to new leads, and I wasn't getting a lot of leads, so it was kind of slow. So I figured, why not just go DoorDash and raise some money for this Alaska trip? So, around lunchtime, I would DoorDash, and, I would hit the dinner rush as well. And then weekends were obviously huge. Hitting the lunch rush, hitting the dinner rush, huge opportunity there. And as you can see from the numbers here, I made pretty good money, right? Not gonna lie, the money wasn't too bad. It kind of varied from week to week depending on how much I could get out. And as you can see, there was one week where I made $43 in my very first week, but I had a week where I made over $300. So I would say that the amount of time I put into this was probably around 5 to 15 hours a week, just depending on the week, right? So I basically was working about half to a quarter the amount that you would at a full-time job, and I was making really good money some weeks. So again, DoorDash is very powerful, and you can actually make a lot of money doing it, depending on your area and depending on the times that you go. Now, here's the thing about DoorDash. You have some costs, right? So the biggest thing is the car, right? The car is going to cost you in gas, obviously. It's also going to cost you in wear and tear. So think about miles in your car, which will lead to oil changes that'll come up sooner. Stuff like that, right? And so the good thing is I have a Camry. So Camrys are very fuel efficient, so that helps. But if you're doing this in like a gas guzzling truck, it's probably not going to be as efficient for you. But if you're like me and you have a Toyota Camry or like a Honda Civic or something like that, it's a really good gas efficient car, the profits are going to be a lot more than if you have a diesel truck, for example. So as far as miles that I put on my car goes, I put around 2,000-ish extra miles in the 2 months that I was doing DoorDash, which is a lot, But again, like I said, Huntsville is a very big zone. If you're in a bigger city with smaller zones, it's going to be a lot better for you. Now, as far as gas costs go, I mean, I didn't really calculate that too much because I'm spending money on gas anyway, and I just kind of consider that a sunk cost. I mean, I know it cuts into my profits, but I didn't really consider it too much, so I'm just going to go off of the sheer amount of money I made here from DoorDash. So within that 2 to 3 months or so that I was doing DoorDash for this trip, I made over $1,100. You can do the math to find the exact number, but it was a pretty good amount. Now, the thing with DoorDash is you are a 1099 contractor, which basically means that you have to set aside about 20% of your income for taxes. So it sounds scary, but the thing is, my last job that I was at, and the job that I was at the time I was doing this dashing stuff, I was 1099 as well, so I'd gotten used to this over the past year or so. And thankfully I'm W-2 now, so it's a lot easier. But again, all you have to do is just go to your local tax professional. I use Liberty Tax. It's pretty easy. They'll just take care of it for you. And again, I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not going to tell you how to do all that in this video. But it's not too bad. Just don't be afraid of it. But after taxes, I made about $925 and some change. And I'll be honest, that didn't cover everything in the trip, but it covered a lot of the major expenses. So it covered the initial flight there, which was about $500 something, maybe like $570, which isn't too bad actually. It's not terrible for a flight to Alaska, right? So cover that, cover the hotel stays, which was like $120 for one hotel that I stayed in Nashville. It's probably about $90 for the Juneau hostel. Probably covered my Ubers as well as a lot of my food expenses. What it didn't cover though was the flight that I tacked on to leave Juneau as well as the rental car. So I want to explain that a little bit because I didn't talk about that in the Alaska video. I didn't film this part. But basically Juneau is a very small town and I love Juneau, right? Juneau is a very cool place. But, I did everything in a day and I didn't want to spend my birthday by myself in Juneau doing the same things. So I decided to head down to Seattle for a few different reasons. Again, like I said, I'd already done everything I wanted to do. B, I have this dream of seeing all 50 US states. And I figured if I can get into Seattle by, let's say, 11 a.m. Pacific, I'll have enough time to drive down to Oregon and back. And I didn't want to have to, make another trip out to like Portland or somewhere in Oregon just to knock that off my bucket list and spend a lot more money doing that. So I just figured, you know what? I'll be in the area. Why not just, call it a day early and go down to Oregon, right? So that's what I did, went down to Oregon, came back up. And the third reason that I wanted to go to Seattle was I had a friend there, right? A former coworker / friend that actually got me my first sales job. And I wanted to meet him in person, which was a really good move because, I got to spend my birthday with a friend, got to meet some of his friends, got to go to a cool Russian kind of non-denominational church. For those of you that don't know, Seattle has a large Russian immigrant population, so the church I went to basically had a sermon. There basically was a sermon that was in English and Russian, and it was really cool to just kind of meet those people and hear the sermon in Russian. And then I got to stay with his family as well, so that was nice of them to host me. And yeah, it was just a good time, and I think I had a better time down there than I would have had by myself in Juneau, to be honest. Not saying that I don't like Juneau. Again, I want to go back to Juneau at some point, hopefully with family, hopefully with some friends. That'd be awesome. But, I didn't want to spend my birthday alone by myself up there, so that's why I spent the extra $500 or so to get a rental car, to get a flight out of there, right? So that way I could just spend some time with friends and see a new state as well. So that wasn't covered in DoorDash, that came out of my own pocket. But my final verdict on DoorDash is that it can be good in a few different situations, right? So, first of all, if you're in a pinch and you really need to make some money, say you're like a government worker that's affected by this current shutdown, which is late October when I'm recording this, it's still going on. Or if you're laid off of your job for some reason and you really just need some quick money, DoorDash it's a good option just to make some money, right? If you want to just save up for a trip like Alaska, or you want to save up to pay off some bills, for example, that hit you by surprise, and let's say you work full time and you just want to do it on the weekends, again, that's the second situation where DoorDash could be pretty handy. And if you live in a major city like, let's say, Charlotte's downtown area, and you know you don't have a car but you have like an e-bike and you don't have that fuel cost there, and it's kind of a small area where you're not going to be going outside that zone too much, and you can just kind of hit local restaurants, you know, go to some safer areas like some apartments downtown, you know, that's not too bad, right? You know, you can make that work, I think, and you can really just profit off of that. But again, not a lot of people are going to be in that situation, right? So I would say DoorDash is good for those situations, but it's not good long term, especially if you're driving all over the place, because you're going to be having a lot of fuel costs, a lot of maintenance costs as well. That's just going to kind of, you know, it's just going to kind of eat into your profits. But yeah, like I said, DoorDash is a good way to make some money. And I would say chase your dreams no matter what they are. You know, find a way. If you're not making enough at your job to do what you want to do and go where you want to go, find a way to, you know, have a second income and find a way to hustle and make those dreams happen. Because really, anybody can do it. Whether you're selling waffles like Ruben or whether you're doing DoorDash like me, you know, you can do it if you put your mind to it. If you want it bad enough, I really do think that you can make things happen, right? Again, not to downplay anybody who's going through a hard economic time, but I think that there's a lot that we can do that we don't think about because we're constrained in boxes. And so, you know, thinking outside the box is something that's really important to do just in life in general, not with money, but just in general, right? You know, be creative, find ways to think outside the box, and, you know, do something crazy every once in a while, right? You know, don't constrain yourself to your normal routine. Do something out of the ordinary, something that pushes your comfort zone. And yeah, just get out there and, you know, get outside and explore this beautiful world, because there's a whole big world for us to explore, and you only get one life to explore it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I got some cool videos coming out soon, but want to make the highest quality stuff. So not sure when the next video will drop, because again, I have a work schedule and, you know, not traveling too much because we're getting closer to winter. But when I do something cool, I'll film it, and then I'll see you guys in that video.